guys, and welcome to the 1 in 20 show. Today I have with me Kyle Brooks. Kyle is as creative as they come. He is an animator and editor who recently worked on the Netflix show BoJack Horseman in Los Angeles. He is funny and witty and has a style all of his own. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
What an introduction.
Yeah, I tried.
That's very kind.
So
saying I worked on BoJack Horseman is a bit of an overstatement, considering I just kind of like organized files and
you worked on
a
Netflix
my name will be in the
original.
credits, so look there for me.
We met in school and in college, and I remember like one of the first times we ever talked was coming down from the dorms to class, and we lived on the same wing, and this is the same. You were roommates with Noah, who was
Right.
on, and
Shout
out Noah.
Check out that episode.
He basically we were just talking about how you guys both lived there, and I lived down the hall, and we just like never. I was only a couple doors over. Anyway, but we were walking to class, and I remember just talking about film festivals, and like we were both chatting about it because we're both film buffs, and you were like, oh yeah, I have an animation that just got in the festival and went through it, and I was like, what? Because there's not that many students in our major.
Right.
Remember, like it was small, and I was like, oh well, my film Trapped is going to New York, and it was like a cool moment, and like from there we worked kind of jointly together, but not a whole lot. But I just appreciated that from you. You know?
I went in a thing called Loop to Loop, which is just like this. It's like, to call it a festival is like it's kind of like a monthly more competition, I guess. But it like screened in LA, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah, that was cool. And then we went on and did it. We did a couple projects together the following year, wasn't it? It was last fall that we did that short.
Right.
With Noah and your brother Keith. Yeah, that was really funny. And I was telling Noah, like, that was a day where I wish we had so much more time to like, and we just didn't schedule anything very well.
No, yeah, that was crazy. That was really busy for me too, because Emily, my fiance, had
shout out Emily.
Yeah, she's in the room. She's somewhere around.
You guys can't see her, but she's here.
She had a law school entrance exam test that morning that I took her to, and then I ran and did everything for the shoot or whatever, and then that night went to a Christmas concert with her and her parents, and then stayed up all night editing it with you until like 5 a.m.
And I remember.
And then I walked home through.
Oh, like, we need to tell that story.
Yeah,
we need to tell that story about the
security guard. Yeah.
So we're in this Kyle's office in the online department, and we're editing this thing for class. We're like, oh, we didn't even think about it. It was like, whatever, we're just gonna go do this. And it was like 3-4 a.m. at that point.
Yeah, it was pretty late.
And I like when you tell it, so just tell the story. It was so weird.
Yeah, I have an office on campus, and like I'm allowed to be there pretty much whenever I want, but I didn't tell security that I was coming, and so I just I didn't really think to, and so we were there editing super late, and then we went to the bathroom and got up for water a couple times, and just the usual stuff, and then I realized when I came back in from the bathroom that like the door was kind of cracked open, and then we saw like flashlights kind of on the blinds.
That's
from
one
outside.
Of those movie moments where you're like, oh my god, it was really weird. What are we doing?
And like I was just like, oh shoot, it's security. And then for some reason I thought it would be better to close the door, because I was like, oh, if they see it cracked open, then they're definitely going to come in. But if I close it, then it'll be fine. Which is stupid because they're right there, obviously. And so I closed it, and then I just heard, freeze, campus security. And then I was just like kind of froze. And then they were just like, who are you? And I like opened the door. I'm like, I'm Kyle Brooks. I'm a student. I work here. And then they're just like, then I saw like laser pointers pointed at the ground.
Dude, they had them on.
Yeah,
like they had guns drawn.
I looked up, and they were just like pointing this gun at me, and they're like, what are you doing, dude?
Dude, I remember sitting in that chair, and I was like, I'm not going to get involved.
Yeah.
So I let you.
You just like chilled there.
I let you go do it.
Yeah.
I felt bad. That was funny.
Yeah.
But that was such a funny experience. But I mean, even since then, you know, we've stayed close with just future endeavors, even though we worked on a commercial together more recently, but just with future stuff, you want to keep your buddies close.
Yeah.
And, I know you've got a bright future with stuff, and that kind of leads into how you got the BoJack Horseman thing, which now this is like more of like a selling point to you and like your future. I know it wasn't like the biggest gig, but just you can fill us all in on how that was.
Yeah. It was actually because of that Loop the Loop festival thing. So that's how I landed that pretty much. And it wasn't really because of my animation, but it was more just like who I talked to, I guess.
Sure.
And it was just this guy there who kind of ran Loop the Loop was also a director on BoJack.
Yeah.
And when I got an email that I was accepted, it was from this guy who knows that guy. And so he was just like, oh, and when you're there, tell, Mike that he's a stinky butt. And I was like, oh, okay. And so, I realized I kind of looked this guy up and I realized who he was. I was like, oh shoot, this guy works on BoJack. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cause I'm a big fan of the show already. And so I went and he kind of like emceed the night, and then like afterwards I kind of told him, I was like, hey, Neil says that you're a stinky butt. And then he's like whoa, he's like, well, tell Neil he's a blah 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 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then so then like something happened, and like I told that guy that, and then he emailed, like I got stuck in this like email chain with these two guys who are like both animators or directors or whatever. And so I had like both of their emails, and I was like, oh, this is weird. Yeah. And then so I emailed the guy, Mike, and I was like, hey, like also I'm looking for an internship. Like if you guys have anything at, I knew Shadow Machine is the company where it's called or where it's made. And then so I asked him about that, and then he's just like, yeah, I'll let you know if anything comes up. And he gave me the email of his producer, and then I just like heard nothing for a long time, like a whole year pretty much. And then back in like the next spring when I was looking for internships again, I kind of sent him another email just like, hey, just so you know, I'm still like available,
sure,
blah blah blah. And then like a few months later he was just like, hey, are you still available? And then like I got hired like the next week just because they were kind of desperate for somebody.
Yeah.
And so it's like a really random like set of occurrences, I guess, that kind of got me that.
And then what season were they on at that point? Because it's been around for
season
a while.
5, yeah.
5.
That's the one I was working on.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what were you doing for the show?
Yeah, it was pretty much just like a PA. So I would just like organize files and help with lip sync, like because they had a guy who would do lip sync, so I'd kind of prep the files for him so it would be easier, and then prep the files for shipment overseas because most animation isn't done in the US anymore.
Yeah.
And so I would just kind of help with that, and then whatever else they needed just around.
Well, and it's also what's interesting is it's like, it's a trade-off in the beginning until you've got a name, right? Like you can work on something bigger, but you got to like take less. I know that for me, just even going to visit sets and stuff and getting out there and just going out as a camera PA, like a 3AC or something, like way down. And that always like kicks you in the butt because you're like, wow, I'm not as important.
No.
Or not as good as I thought I was, know? And so I always found that big, and I'm sure that's like the first of many, for you, hopefully. I mean, I feel like you and I are in a unique situation where we have worked pretty hard for the connections that we have, and we keep going and do our art in our free time too.
Right.
Like for me, like it's networking, and for you, I know that you're always drawing and like always animating.
Yeah.
And what is it about like the whole animation style and just drawing in general that like brings a side out of you? Like what is it that connects you with that?
I don't know. I've always loved drawing since I was little or whatever, and I don't think it really occurred to me to like kind of do animation until like later, like high school or whatever. But by then it was more like I didn't really, all I thought about animation was like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, and I thought that was pretty much it. I mean, and Disney obviously, and but it wasn't until like college when I kind of realized that there's just so much more animation out there with like freelancers and commercial work and independent work and stuff like that. And that's kind of what got me really excited about it, was just that these people were doing things on their own without like any help, and they were just doing it by themselves.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
And whenever they could. So I thought that whole thing was really appealing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this group called Late Night Work Club,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of how I got into that scene, and it's pretty much like a set of short films kind of devoted to people who made them in their spare time,
right.
sort of thing. And they're like other animators, but that was kind of like what inspired me, just that sort of grind, I guess.
Right. No, that's awesome. And I really liked, like, I love all of your like pen and ink sketchings, because they're all like super cool and abstract. But like, how would you define your style, like what you like to draw? Like, how do you get inspiration for what you want to draw, like all that stuff?
Yeah. I don't know that I have a really developed style yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just like constantly kind of changing. But yeah, definitely get inspiration from just other artists and just try and steal from them as much as I can, you know?
Yeah.
Which sometimes is kind of like it gives me like really big doubts of just like, oh, I'm such a fraud, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just stealing from these other people, and I have nothing original to say or anything like that.
But is there anything really original anymore?
For sure.
Not really.
Yeah. And so I think that's mainly the biggest inspiration, is just like other artists that I, you know, like, admire their work, and then just kind of want to imitate, but, you know, kind of make my own as well.
Right. Who are some of like those artists for you that like continually, besides the one you mentioned, like the group that you mentioned, like
Mm-hmm.
individual artists or different production companies that you find yourself following?
Yeah, well, Adult Swim's always doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
Just because they get really cool people to work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's this, and then so I also interned at this animation festival called Glass
Mm-hmm.
up in Berkeley, and then I got to meet a lot of these like animators that I'm also super like, that I was fans of already, and then I got to meet them in person, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of like those people, like I don't know, there's Sean Buckaloo, Charles Hutner, Felix Colgrave, just like, I don't know, you can find them. It's just like people I come across on social media,
right,
or whatever, and then just kind of like stalk all their work.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and like European art, I know we've chatted about that. European art is so fascinating in the like multimedia realm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've seen a lot on Vimeo, because Vimeo has just just the hub, you know, and it's cool to see them mixing more real life style animation things into actual things that are shot. Like the Gorillas, have you seen the Gorillas music video where they
with
have
Jack Black?
With Jack Black, with them like skating,
right,
with that animated character skating from the band. I thought that's pretty cool, like that whole style. And I know you and I were like chatting about eventually hopefully doing projects like, you know, like that,
right,
because I think that could be the way things go in a way, you know, like I also want your opinion, because I know you're a Tarantino fan, like when it comes to just film, and I know you're like well versed in a lot of movies, a lot more than I know,
right.
But what is it about, like, which do you prefer is what I should ask. Do you prefer films that just stay like purist and are just, you know, real footage and you know, no animation, no special effects, or do you like a little bit of that? Or, you know, like Ready Player One, to me, like that movie, I could hardly believe was Spielberg. I know Spielberg has special effects, but like, you even compare that to Jurassic Park or something like that, it just doesn't even seem like him anymore, because it's so animation heavy. What's your like opinion on that?
I don't know. I think it's just, as long as it's good, I'm, you know, okay with it.
Story
like,
wise, good, or like
yeah, and just like, I don't know, just well made.
Yeah.
I think, like, I don't know, with stuff like Marvel movies, I know there's a lot of like people who work on it who are really good artists, and just like, and CG artists like don't get enough, you know, recognition at all.
Right.
But the
nobody knows who they are.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's just a million of them, because it's such a big thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like not as big a fan of CG as, like, I don't know, as I am just like a regular, I don't know.
Right.
But I mean, it just depends on how it's used, I guess. Because it's kind of hard just to say like, oh, I hate CG or I hate, live action, just regular.
Well, and like to bounce off of that, like Ready Player One as an example, still to me, like I really dug the story of that movie. Like I liked it, but it didn't have the same effect as a movie where they didn't use any real effects. Like practical effects to me are like fascinating.
Oh yeah.
That takes so much work to program it. Like that video Bubbling that we were watching.
Yeah.
That video is so cool.
Yeah.
By Anderson .Paak or whatever his name is.
Right.
He's like, that video to me, like I watched it yesterday again and I was like, dude, that is so cool to use practical effects like the ATM spitting out money and
did you see like
awesome.
that director behind the scenes or whatever?
Yeah, I was just watching it.
I thought it was funny that they used the Supreme money gun.
Yeah,
like, they just kind of taped it inside.
Yeah, they used that like money gun and then just hardwired it out to where they could press it and shoot stuff out funny. Instead of going the CG way.
Right. Which
in a lot of ways I think is a trade-off because nowadays it's so much, not so much cheaper, but you could do one or the other. Because practical or the CGI is so good. Yeah, I think it's crazy.
I think right now it's just like, even though CG is really good, I feel like, I don't know if it's because that I'm like so used to seeing it or not or what it is, but like it just seems like most movies that use CG and like try to kind of hide it, it's always just like, oh, that's definitely CG.
Right.
Which is obviously not the case for like some movies. Like I don't know, David Fincher uses a lot of CG, but he's like. You never know. You'd be like, why would you use CG for that? But, but yeah, there's like other stuff where it's just kind of like, all right, Grand Moff Tarkin and in Star Wars is just all right, you look weird.
Yeah, it's stupid. I feel that way too. Like I feel if somebody could set it up in a way where it looks, I like Tron, parts of Tron where. Jeff obviously Bridges, Jeff Bridges, they had to make him look younger, and it doesn't look that great. But it was 2010, and for 2010, it was pretty darn good. You know what I mean? Like, they could use it there. And I like something like that a little better, except that they created an entire, like, CG world.
Right.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And it looks amazing. I think what it is timeless. Like, you and I have talked about that before. If it looks timeless and something that you can go back to and it doesn't look outdated, then somebody did something right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the problem. I think that especially like early 2000s movies, like with CG, when it kind of like became really huge, and people are like, oh shoot, we're going to use this on everything. But like now you realize that really didn't look good at all.
Yeah.
I feel like in a few years we'll probably look back on movies like The Avengers or whatever and be like, I mean, it's okay, like how it looks.
Right, over time.
Right.
And dude, the budgets too are nuts for that stuff. But it is amazing, like we were talking cameras the other day. I think it was me and Marcello Colasili. We were just chatting about like how like your eye can't really perceive past 3K resolution.
Yeah.
And all these cameras like Red are boasting 8K sensors and all this stuff, which is nuts. But it's not really true 8K. It's like 4K up-res smashing more pixels into the image. And it's interesting to think that a lot of the new CGI movies need that much more resolution for keying.
Yeah.
Like when they go in with green screen and take out the backdrop and animate.
Right.
They need that much more like pixel depth so that they're able to actually paint.
Right.
Without seeing a keying line.
Yeah.
But other than that, like Tarantino and true film people use like the Alexa Mini or the Alexa Amira or different cameras that are like 6K cameras that are true 6K sensors. You know what I mean? Like 65 millimeter sensors. Then that to me is cooler than I don't know. It's interesting. Definitely. It's super interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting how you can kind of get that film look, I guess, on something digital, but it always, I don't know, there's something just about film that you just gotta love.
Yeah. It's so different.
Even though it sounds like a pretentious thing to say.
Yeah. Well, so I know also like to talk a little bit about this. I know you edit a lot too. Like, I know that you edit for a job as well. Is there any, like, have you seen any similarities or differences between like editing and animating and being on set? Like, what do you know, how is editing mix into all of that?
I'd say, I think editing just kind of teaches you to do things by feeling, just like if it feels right, I guess. 'Cause you can kind of tell, like on like a first draft, like roughly what you want by just kind of going through, just by your gut instinct about where to cut and like what looks good.
Sure.
But so I think that's kind of where it's been most helpful, with just like doing things on first instinct rather than like overthinking them and you know, making them, because I feel like the biggest, not the biggest, but like an issue with certain, you know, productions or whatever that have just like a big hierarchy of people, and it's not just like a director and an editor and director gets final cut sort of thing, but it's like, you know, a bunch of producers that you have to please, that I feel like when you get too many people involved, it just gets overthought and like overdone to the point where it's just like, it's not good anymore. Right. Like that's what I feel like. I feel like with Thor, did you see that?
Yeah. Ragnarok. That one.
Yeah. I feel like the guy Taika Waititi is like a fantastic director. Like all of his other stuff is great. And I like Thor. No, I liked it a lot. Okay. But there were parts in it that you could definitely tell were just like, okay, yeah, the studio made him do that part, or like there was just like certain jokes in there that was just like, it doesn't really fit. I feel like.
Well, and isn't the clear explanation of something like that, that like extra effects and different things sell, like the amount of action films that come out as opposed to like a Wes Anderson film, it's like, it's so one-sided because everybody pays for to go see that kind of crap. You know what I mean? Yeah. Infinity War, like how much of Infinity War was actually practical?
It's definitely
like 50, maybe 50%. Right. If you think about how much they did for that.
Yeah, I don't think it's just the effects or like the big razzle dazzle, but that's like the bad thing. I think it's just more like shoehorning in, you know, like dumb plot points and like the whole story with Hela in Ragnarok. Yeah, it's just kind of like, this is just bad like writing. Like it just isn't good.
Right. And isn't that the base of everything? Yeah. To be honest, if you could be as great as you can be in production with an incredible crew and DP and post. Yeah. But you're nothing without a story, because people still won't go see it. Right. Like we watched, me and Emma, Emma's out here today too. Shout out to Emma Beck, my beautiful girlfriend. We were watching Disaster Artist last night. Oh yeah. And that to me was a really good film. Like obviously it's hilarious. Like how did that movie ever get made and all this stuff, and it's so mysterious and hilarious. You know, I love the Franco brothers when they do stuff together. They're so funny. But even that one had a good feel to it. You know what I mean? Like that one still felt like you're not interrupted by the story. Like I mean, by all the effects is what I meant to say. But you know, like you and I both know Marcelo, and who, you know, he's just been around forever, and he always says that he's like, when I'm watching something, it drives me nuts when I'm focusing on what they're doing instead of paying attention to the story. You know, I don't know if you feel that at all, but I feel like Tarantino's movies, you're never bothered. Right. People like that, you're not bothered by all of that stuff, you know?
Yeah, I think, and then even with stuff like that, he's just kind of so over the top to the point where it's like, that's kind of the point, is just that how ridiculous it is, like Kill Bill. Right. Yeah. It's just like, you know, it's obviously meant to be over the top and crazy. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, I kind of lost not respect, but when Marcella said that he didn't like Wes Anderson movies just because they look so flat, and I was just like,
that's him,
like literally the point.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, I know that's his style, all in his own. So I have like 3 bumper questions to normally end with. So one, on more of a lighter note, what's your favorite like snack food right now?
Ooh. Cheez-Its forever and always.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love Cheez-Its. That artificial cheese.
Yeah. No, it's fresh baked.
It's fresh baked. Yeah. I love those Cheez-It commercials. They're always so funny too. Celebrity, or in this sense, since it's kind of more of a film thing too that we're talking about, who would you most want to spend the day with? Somebody famous. That's a toughie.
I don't know. I feel like that changes every day. Probably just like Martin Scorsese, just because he's been around the block a few times.
The GOAT.
Yeah.
He's Kobe of
right.
the film world.
Right.
Yeah. You would want to like spend a day on set with that guy.
Yeah. That'd be sick.
It'd be awesome. And then on more of like a wrapping up serious note, in a sense, where do you see yourself like kind of in the next 5 years?
Oh, that's a toughie too.
Or a want to see yourself?
I don't know.
Well, you got to get married first in September.
Yeah. Well, with Emily.
Yeah.
But like, are you talking like job wise or
anything?
Location
wise?
Yeah.
Hopefully job wise.
It'd be nice to move out of California, but even though I know that a lot of animation is here, but
I hear that. I thought about that too.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be honestly like happy with just like a job that I enjoy. It doesn't even have to be like, I don't know, if I was working on a show or if I was working, for I don't know, just something random, but anything with like involving animation. But that's the thing. It's like it doesn't really even need to be that, because I can still do that on my own.
Right.
It's like I never really need to be like 100% focused on animation. I guess like it'd be nice, but it's not something that's like a burning desire in my heart.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, thanks for being on the show.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
This has been the 1 in 20 show. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 1 in 20 show, and we'll have a new episode up shortly.
Yeet.
Yeet.